We are back with naming ionic compounds. The one tricky part, we've been naming ionic compounds. We have metals plus nonmetals. Very straightforward. We made their formulas using the valence electron number that we can tell from the periodic table. But the transition metals can have variable oxidation numbers. So in their name, we have to state what the oxidation number will be. And that's kind of difficult. This is something that gets students a lot, but let's give this a try. So name of the first element, or ammonium. Well, the first element, Fe, we know is iron. So we can write that right here. Iron. If needed, the Roman numeral that represents the oxidation number of the transition metal. So we double check, and iron seems to be a transition metal. It is right here. These are the ones that can have these hybrid orbitals. They can be stable when they're half filled or fully filled. You don't know. They do a lot of different things, and that's way beyond the scope of this course. But when we have a compound, we can figure it out. First thing we need to do is separate these out, Fe, SO4. We know from the formula there's one of each of them. That's the unspoken one. Then we're going to look on our polyatomic ion list, find our SO4, our sulfate is right here, and it has a charge of -2. That will not change. So we know that's -2. So this is called the reverse swap. Now, if we had swapped and dropped with this 2, would have been a 2. But it's a 1. That means this was reduced. So we have to, through logic, say, well, this was a 2 also, and bring it back up. So it was an Fe2 plus and a 2 minus that were swapped, and this is reduced to the formula that we were given. This is some reverse kind of like investigation. We're sleuths here. We're figuring out what the missing oxidation number is. So we figured that out pretty easy. So in parentheses, you are going to write the Roman numeral that represents the oxidation numbers. That's iron 2, and right here we have our SO4, so we'll go back to our reference table. SO4, -2, that's sulfate. Sulfate. So the answer for this one right here that we were stumped on before, iron, in parentheses 2, and then sulfate. And that is how we write that. Let's find another one, and we'll do one more example. We'll come down here to this one that looks very complicated. I always like to do the complicated ones as the example, let you do the easier ones, so you're not afraid. So right here we have zinc, 3, PO4, 2. All right, so first thing I know, well, that's a polyatomic ion. It's got some parentheses, it's got 2 subscripts, a subscript outside the parentheses, and I'm going to go find that. That is phosphate, and it has a -3 charge. -3. Now I'm going to write down right below here phosphate, because we are naming this phosphate. Okay, so let's be a sleuth. If we did the swap and drop, 3 came down to here. Ooh, so what would have had to have come down to here, it doesn't look like there's any reduction since these two are the same, that this would have been a -2. So the name for this one would be zinc, parentheses. What goes in the parentheses is not the subscript, but the oxidation number that we sleuthed out. We were detectives and figured out that this was zinc 2-phosphate. So you just need to do some logic and do some sleuthing to figure out what the oxidation number on the transition metal is.